This is episode number 8 of the Upgrade Your Life podcast, and our episode is how to succeed as a leader. My guest is a leadership expert coming to you from London, England. We learn about self-leadership, we learn about failure, we learn about how to get the most out of those that we lead. It's an awesome interview. Stay tuned. So the big question is, how do ambitious people like us, who grew up listening to the old advice of go to school, work hard for 40 years, and retire when you're old, create a life today that is meaningful, abundant, healthy, and brings joy, while also leading a life that is productive and full of achievement? That is the question, and this is the podcast that will help give you the answers that you're searching for. My name is Del Denny, and welcome to the Upgrade Your Life podcast. Welcome to the Upgrade Your Life podcast. My name is Del Denny, and we have a special guest on the show. We have Sope Agbelusi. He is a husband, father, and someone whose purpose is help others live and not just exist. He does this as a leadership coach working with corporate companies and startups. He does this from stage sharing his own journey and through his Instagram account, Live Your Quotes, which has over 100,000 subscribers. Sope, welcome to the Upgrade Your Life podcast.
Hi, Dale. Thanks for having me.
I'm very excited because leadership is my favorite topic in the world. I could talk about this all day long.
Okay.
And you are a leadership coach. So tell me about yourself. How did you get into this?
For me, leadership is all about influence. It's about influence, and then influence about adding value to people's lives. And from probably right about the age of 15, 16, it's something that I've been doing. I realized that I have a very good way of asking questions to pull the answers out of people, because it's not just about you giving people the answers. They need to find the answers for themselves, and that way it sticks more. And something I've been doing for years. So I took that and went to university. I met my wife, and she challenged me in a very new, a new and exciting way. She made me look at life really, really differently. We got married at 21. We had kids really young as well. And through that journey, I kind of took that attitude into work. And I started, I had a corporate career for 15 years, got a background as a chartered accountant. I've worked as a project manager. I've worked in IT. I've worked in automotive, creating beautiful cars like the Range Rover and things like that over the years. But in all those different industries and different countries, it's been all about people and how to get the best out of people. And the best way you do that is by influencing them the right possible way. And that's where the whole leadership came about. I was dealing with teams that were people who were 20, 25 years older than me, people who were younger than me, but I could relate to them at all levels because I knew how to treat people as individuals. And I think that's where the leadership has a problem at the moment. People are being treated as commodities, or leaders are not looking at people as individuals. And therefore, they don't quite understand who they're supposed to be leading or understand the best way to influence them the right way.
I love that. So as people are starting to listen to this podcast and they're thinking about leadership, there's this myth about leadership of, I was, you're a born leader, I'm not a leader, but leadership is influence, just like you said. Can you speak a little bit on that ideology? Like why should leadership matter in someone's life?
Because we all lead, and leadership starts with yourself. It's about how do you lead yourself? What are the things that influences you as a person to make a decision? What are the books that you take in? What are the social media accounts, for example, in this day and age that you consume? All those kind of things. What are the habits that you have on a daily basis? So, for example, I tend to get up at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Now, the reason why I'm saying that is my daily habit is to start off the day when no one's awake. I go for a run for 30 to 45 minutes. Either praying, or I'm listening to a podcast, or just taking time out and there's just no noise whatsoever. But that's because you're going to get think there's what 50, 60,000 thoughts a day being bombarded at you from the world. But I start my day with clarity. That's leadership. That's self-leadership. And then once you know how to lead yourself, you're not easily influenced by the world. Then you can then go into world and start leading the people. So it's something that people should really, really be intentional about, because we have to lead ourselves on a daily basis. You don't think about it as leadership, that's what you're doing, because you're making decisions. Okay, I'm going to get up this time, then I'm going to go to work, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. All that, those decisions, you are influencing yourself. So where does that influence come from? Is it from your environment? Is it from your friends? Is it from your parents? Is it from TV or media? Those things are important, because when you start cutting out the negative things, and then your life starts to change in a positive way. But when you don't know what's influencing you, life never moves forward.
Yeah, that's a very fascinating thought there. And I don't think very many people think about self-leadership first. They think I have to have this title, I have to have all these followers,
Mm,
but it really does start with ourselves, doesn't it?
yeah, it does.
What do you think is the biggest hurdle that people have in leadership?
I think the biggest hurdle is around self-awareness. And the reason why self-awareness is so critical is it touches a lot of areas that create a lot of touch points, such as ego, humility, um, empathy, looking at people and treating them in the right possible way. All of that starts from self-awareness. If I know my strengths and my weaknesses, I'm not going to get intimidated by what someone else is doing. But a lot of times so for example, in this day and age, we have deal with people who have teams where you're leading across 5 generations. And you might get someone who is 19 or 20 in your team who is great in one particular area. And then that manager or that leader gets intimidated by that person, and they start being jealous of that person and putting stuff into place. But if you knew your strengths and weaknesses, you can be like, actually, this person's younger than me, yeah, but I'm in charge of them. They've shown this great skill in that particular area. Let me grow and nurture that person so they can be the best they can possibly be. But without having that self-awareness and knowing who you are, you would try and put that younger person down, which is what I tend to see quite a lot. A lot of young people start complaining about that, for example. And that's why I say self-awareness is key. Self-awareness will help you look at people and say, you know what? I'm going to help you be the best you can possibly be. Because it's not about me, it's about you. Once you can say those words, it's not about me, it's about you, things begin to shift. But so many of us are so focused on what can I get out of this? How can I elevate myself with this person? It's about me, 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 me. When leadership shifts from being me to being you, then leadership can move forward. Leadership can move the teams forward. Leadership can move your surroundings and the culture and the corporations and your families forward. And that's where it starts, all with self-awareness and then focus on other people.
That's absolutely fascinating. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, you see good leaders, you see great leaders, and what's the difference maker between the two? It's their mentality of service. Bad leaders, it's about them and putting them up on a pedestal and looking how great I am. But when it comes to great leaders, they're worried about their people. They're there to serve their people and get the best out of them and help them in any way. And that's their mentality to it. For someone to become a leader, if someone came to you and said, "Hey, look, I know I need to develop this skill set of leadership. Where do I start?" What advice would you give them?
The advice I will give them is, so when I run a program with leaders, for example, that is actually one of the questions that we always start with, that what do you want? What is it are you trying to achieve? And then based on that, and I look at the skills around you as a person. When I say skills are talking about communication, for example, self-awareness I mentioned previously, skills like empathy And then we look at how that plays out in one, and two, how that plays out around other people. And then the different resources, for example, in YouTube. YouTube is brilliant. I would highly recommend things like watching he's obviously the world-renowned leader going into companies and teaching them about leadership. But John Maxwell has, I think he has 100 books actually. 100th one just came out a couple of weeks ago. He's a great resource. I recommend the book by James Clear. I'm not sure if you read that one before, Biohabits.
Oh, yes, Atomic Habits. Absolutely. That's a great read.
Atomic Habits. Now, that's brilliant because when you talk about the one line over sticks remains goals, but the difference in their systems. Your systems are key. Your systems are the ones that are going to help you understand who you are and what you're really about, and they're going to help you to lead better. So that one I'll definitely recommend as well.
That's a great read. And one of my favorite quotes, I've committed it to memory from Atomic Habits, is you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And yeah, it is. It's absolutely a great thought process, because we can aspire to great things, but what systems have we put in place? And I think that's a good example that you used earlier. Is you talked about your morning and your daily habits of getting up in the morning, running, self-leadership. That's a system right there. That's what develops great outcomes, so to speak. That's awesome. What else do you teach as a leader? Empathy, you talked about that, developing empathy. Yeah. What else does a potential leader have to get right?
Potentially, it has to build trust. And trust is done in the smallest possible things. And the reason I say that is, imagine you go to your boss and you have a conversation about something, and your boss says to you, give me a week, I'm going to get back to you. A week passes and nothing. 2 weeks passes and nothing. You go back to them, you remind them, they're like, yeah, I'm going to do it. 3 weeks, nothing. By the time if they eventually get around to it, it takes a month for them to get around to it. You have lost trust in that person, because you've had to go back to them and keep on reminding them about something they said that they were going to do. It's in the small little details. So when you say, I'm going to do something, do it. When things aren't going right, be there to shield and protect your team, to take the brunt of it. And then when things are going right and they've done well, be there to push them forward and shine a spotlight on them. Those little things build trust. I used to be very intentional. So when I had teams, once every 2 weeks, I used to create meetings with the people. I used to work with 6 different people, and I'll take them out for lunch, and we'll go out and we will talk about nothing to do with work. It was about their lives. It was just all about them. It was about me getting to know them and me trying to understand ways I could help them outside of work. Now, by me focusing on them outside of work and giving them tools and resources and helping them to develop, when they came back into work, their work rate was ridiculous. I mean, they put in the work and the reason what that was because I was taking out my time, taking out the work environment, taking out my time to help them grow outside of work. And they appreciated that. Those little things, they were like, this person is taking an interest in me as an individual. And we built a relationship. We built trust. They knew that when I said I was going to do something, I could do it. So by building trust, by modeling that behavior you want to see as well, all that is critical. That's why when we started out, I always say I'm a husband and a father, and then all that flows into my work. Because I learned to build trust with my wife. I learned to build trust with my 2 little kids. So anytime I say in this house, so I'm going to do something twice, they know it's going to get done. That's why my kids, a lot of times I say no, because just to make sure they don't push it too far. But they know that already. And that's me leading from the inside out rather than the outside in. Therefore, when I go into the workplace, I can develop trust and build relationships with my team. And the more they trust me and the more they know that this guy is reliable, this guy is dependable, the more they know that I'm going to listen and not just talk over them. I'm going to listen and not judge them, regardless of what they're trying to share with me. They now see that as, wow, this person is really investing in me on a whole different level. What's the best thing I can do to show them my appreciation? It's to do my best. It's to work as hard as I can possibly do and be as productive as I can possibly be, so it helps that person out. And that's where you get that balance. Once I build that relationship, once I've built that trust, once I've shown my credibility to those I'm trying to lead, then I'll give it back to you. But you as a leader have to take that first step and develop and nurture those kind of relationships and build that trust in your team.
Definitely. Definitely. I think about building relationships is one of the strongest part at the beginning of a leader's journey. And how do we develop those relationships? How do we develop those trusts? And I've always used an acronym to help, and maybe this might help some of our listeners. But I know when I take, people out to dinner, just the same thing. I have an agenda in my mind. I don't tell them this. I don't say, okay, what are these steps? But in my mind, there's an acronym that I go through, and it's FORD, FORD. It's family, occupation, recreation, dreams. I want to know about their family. I want to know about what they do. I want to know what they like to do for fun. What are their aspirations? And so I have a little checklist in my mind. And I think it's Jim Rohn that says people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And
Yep.
when you get to know people, you get to understand who they are, where they come from, what their goals and desires are, and you truly care. I think that's the key to it. You genuinely care. You'll see so much more come out of people.
That is so true. I couldn't agree more.
So let's talk about results. Once we develop empathy, we develop trust, a relationship with one another. People start following you more because of the results that you get. But sometimes the results aren't always, we don't always get the results. Sometimes we fail at what we do. Uh, what advice do you have for someone that has come up short in their life in maybe an area? Maybe they failed in an area and they're trying to bounce back a little bit.
Own it. And owning your failure is not about wallowing in your failure. It's not about staying stuck in your failure. It's about recognizing the fact that failure is part of the game. When the more you, I should say the more you fail, but when you fail, you take a step back, you break down what has happened or what you think has happened. You can speak to one or two or three people around you as well to get a different perspective. And then by understanding how things didn't go right, you can then move forward and look at ways of executing and changing those things that you've learned and then trying again. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to work the second time, but you're improving. And then when you've improved, okay, actually, I can see some improvements here. And then you start building momentum bit by bit by bit by bit. I mean, if we look at a lot of the biggest companies we have around us today, for example, the likes of Amazon, they didn't start off as Amazon. There were a number of things that they tried which did not work. Same as Facebook. All those massive companies, the things that are normal to us nowadays, they didn't start off straight away. They got it right first time round. They failed. Even Microsoft failed before it was Microsoft, when Bill Gates first started out, his old company previously. But they owned their failure. They took a different approach to it, and then they tried again, and then you try again. So when you fail, don't stay stuck and don't stay wallowing. I remember when I first got married, we had a little kid once I was 22. And there was a job that I went for. I thought the job was great. It was going to help us out financially speaking. And then something went wrong there. And then they let us all go. And I came home, and for about 2 weeks, I just couldn't get off the couch because I was like, I've been fired. It was the middle of the recession. How am I going to provide for my family? What am I going to do? And then I just remember, like I said, it's so good to get centered. Like, just own it and move forward with it. Own it and move forward with it. Those were the words that kept on going through my head. And since then, I was like, right, I'm going to get up and start. And I remember firing off, I think it was probably about 60 or 70 CVs to different recruiters in a day. And I just kept on doing that repeatedly until I got a job. And throughout my career, things haven't always gone right. There are times when it's cost the company I work for, run different projects, for example, and they have not gone well, and it's cost a lot of money. And it hasn't been the easiest conversation to have. But when I go in, I'm like, actually, this has not worked out. It's cost us a couple of £1 million. However, we recognize the fact that here's where we went wrong, and here's what we could have done better. Here's what we could have improved. Therefore, going forward, here's what we're going to do. And when I've gone in there with that kind of attitude and approach the situation rather than be like, it's gone wrong, it's this person's fault, that person's to blame, and all that kind of stuff, it's been a completely different atmosphere. I'm not saying it's an easy atmosphere. Actually, it is an easy atmosphere when I go in there and I own it and be like, actually, here's how we're going to change things rather than trying to blame someone else. So when things go wrong, when we have failures in our life, we need to own it. Don't look at anyone else. Don't try and blame anyone else. Own the responsibility, because only you can change things. Only you can move out of that failure. But that only begins and that only starts with when you own it. Because if you don't, you can try and do something completely different. And then you might come up short again because you've never learned the lesson that that failure is supposed to teach you. So many of us go around that hamster wheel time and time and time again because we refuse to just relax, chill, assess what went wrong, learn the lessons, and then apply those lessons into the new venture. We just go again. And that's where the owning it comes in. You have to sit with it for a while. You have to understand with the failure for a while as best as you can, and then learn some lessons from it, and then move forward.
That's spot on. And I think too many people are afraid to fail, and it's okay to fail. People want this perfection, and they were ace students in school, and and they get in the real world, and they don't want to apply themselves because they might fail. But that's where the lessons are. That's where we grow as humans, as leaders. And it's okay. I failed so many times, and it's been embarrassing some of the things that I've failed out, but at the same time, though, those lessons teach you valuable lessons, and I appreciate them. They're hard going through, but when you look back, you're better because you've went through that than not have gone through it at all.
Definitely, the failures are so important. As hard and as difficult as they can be, they are critical for us to grow, to develop, and to evolve. Because if not, you just never learn anything. You just coast all the way through. You don't learn how to deal with hardships. You don't learn how to build that backbone, that tenacity, that resilience when things are going to come at you, because life is never smooth. Nothing is ever perfect, whether it's work, whether it's your relationship, whether it's yourself, or whatever you're trying to do, nothing's ever perfect. Things are always going to go wrong. You need to learn how to deal with those things. And the way you learn to deal with those things is when you have failures in life. You build that backbone.
That's great advice. I want to ask you one more question, and I ask every single one of our guests on the Upgrade Your Life podcast this question. That's a deep question, so here it goes. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. If you could turn back time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what advice would you give yourself for reaching your full potential?
Hmm. I think the advice I will probably give myself would be just keep going. And it's nothing profound, it's nothing radical. But when I look back to my 18-year-old self, everything I've gone through from then till now, I wouldn't change, because I feel like I just talked about now, I feel like those experiences, the good and the bad, have helped bring me to where I am today. And if I didn't go through a lot of those opportunities or a lot of those pitfalls, I wouldn't have developed and grown to who I needed to be. And I would have learned the core skills. I would have learned who I was. And so my 18-year-old self would just be keep on going. Just
Beautiful.
don't stop, don't give up. Just keep on going, keep on grinding, and you'll be fine. You'll figure it out.
That's wonderful. Sope, where can people get in touch with you? Where can they find more about you and what you do?
So you can find more about me on www.mindsetshift.co.uk or on LinkedIn. I know I put a lot of articles and videos up there. So if you go on LinkedIn and you type in SOPE space AGBELUSI, you find me on there. And also on Instagram. Instagram page is Live Your Quotes. I put a lot of quotes, videos, and a lot of humans doing amazing acts up there as well. That's something I really like to showcase, is that humanity is not broken. There's so many people doing wonderful things out there. So I love spreading that positivity and kindness. I put a lot of videos on there as well.
That's awesome. Well, I'll put the links in the show notes. So if you want to find more about Sope, check out the show notes. But Sope, thanks for coming on the Upgrade Your Life podcast. I learned so much for you. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. There you go. That was a great interview with Sope. Again, if you want to reach out to Sope, I'll add his information in the show notes. If you enjoyed this interview, I'd ask if you could leave us a review. Those reviews help us grow this podcast, and we sincerely appreciate it. Well, that's it, my friends. Remember, learn, lead, and live to your full potential.